Everyone can see my screen? Great. Welcome. Thank you, Chris, for introducing Linda and I. We're happy to be here today. Just some housekeeping, we just mentioned it. Please keep your microphones off, but if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll call on people. You could definitely post to the chat, and then you can put on your camera when you're speaking. Obviously, I know that it's difficult to have a lot of people's cameras on at once, especially with so many people on the call. We just want to have a disclaimer right up front that we are not the experts on this topic, but we're hoping to engage in a fruitful conversation around strategies for teaching large enrollment courses online. We are working with faculty at our university that are teaching right now with large classes, and we're assuming most of you are as well. And we have some ideas that we've found or we've noticed it with our faculty, and we're hoping that we learn from you guys as well. So we start off with our learning objectives to identify some practical strategies for engaging students at scale, discussing strategies that maintain interaction while streamlining grading and feedback, and then considering ways to implement some of these strategies. And we're going to start off with a poll. I can actually launch that myself as a co-host. So how large is your largest online class? You guys can just quickly at about half. Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to end the polling now. I'm just going to share the results. So most everyone is 0 to 50, which is great. At Stony Brook, we have classes in the hundreds. So we are working with faculty on really large scale. And obviously it's always challenging. Some have TAs and some don't have TAs. So we'll be discussing that as we continue. So just to look back a little bit, traditionally, so before COVID, a lot of students were taking classes traditionally. So we wanted to take a little bit of a step back and look at a survey by Wiley that focused on traditional online students. And these are students that are not taking courses right now because of COVID. And the top reason students enroll in an online program, they want to take an online program, is flexibility, followed by convenience and faculty engagement. So that those are the three things that they're looking for in order to be successful in their online course. Also, if a student is taking an entire program online, they do expect some consistency across the board. So that's just traditional online students. Traditional online students are not necessarily the same as traditional face-to-face students. Students that are taking classes in brick and mortar schools are taking classes there because they want to be there and they don't necessarily want to take an online course. And COVID obviously has forced many of these people to take an online course. So to look at the COVID numbers, this is some satisfaction numbers pre-COVID and post-COVID based on class size. And if you do the math, there's a larger discrepancy. The larger the class size becomes, the less satisfied they have become when the class moves online. So that's why we're hoping today we can take a look at some strategies to bring those numbers up.
So this begs the question about what we've been doing since COVID, which is more accurately termed remote emergency teaching than actually calling it online teaching. And there's a wonderful EDUCAUSE article that we found. Perhaps some of you have read it. The link is there at the bottom of the slide, and it's also included on our reference slide at the end. Really, remote emergency teaching is defined as a temporary solution. It's not the way we would normally want to teach an online course or even design and prepare an online course. And as a result, often an instructor is not able to really take best advantage of the affordances of online asynchronous in particular, but also synchronous. So what ends up happening is that the quality of the course might be diminished somewhat, mainly because faculty do not have adequate time to prepare in an emergency situation. So to quote the article, the primary objective in these circumstances is not to recreate a robust educational ecosystem, but rather to provide temporary access to instruction and instructional supports in a manner that's quick to set up and reliably available during an emergency or a crisis. And so the rapid approach necessary for emergency remote teaching might diminish the quality of the courses that are delivered, because no one making the transition, to online teaching under these circumstances would truly be designing to take full advantage of the possibilities of the online format. So we want to keep that in mind, because the idea is that we'd like to learn from this experience in order to improve what's been done thus far. And as you well know, because of COVID, many very large enrolled courses have had to move online. So as Rose said earlier, at Stony Brook, our undergrad courses, they average between 100 and some are as high as 500. And by no means are we experts in that. We're kind of learning as we go. And what we've done is a lot of homework, so to speak, to understand better what's happening at other universities that are in the same situation of very large enrolled courses. And so what we're going to share with you today are the practical tips that we've uncovered from the references that we've looked at. We haven't found any real strong research on large online course teaching. So that might be an area that's fertile for those of you who are interested in doing research. We do want you to be engaged with us in this conversation. I know it's a rather large group, but we do want you to participate. So we're going to go to the next slide, and really what we want to gather from you are what your experiences have been. And while we're doing this, Rose is going to be taking notes. We will then, make them as concise as we can and put them on the slides. And at the end of the presentation, when we send out our slides to you, your input will be included on the next 3 slides. So the first thing we'd like you to comment on, and you can put this in the chat, what are strategies that you personally have found were successful with your large classes?
And if anyone does share, it'd be helpful to know about how many students you're talking about. Lecture video with embedded quizzes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Strategies that you've experimented with? Yes, breakout room activities are very effective in synchronous classes. Breakout rooms are great in small classes as well. Yes, Renee. Keith, excellent. He's broken his class of 60 into 4 groups. That's a great strategy, and one which we found often in our homework that we've done. Short response assignments that are easy to grade. Yes, absolutely. We will be talking about that as well. Thank you, Paul. The discussion group chain, that's an interesting one. We might ask you to elaborate on that one a little bit. Opening early, yes, if you're doing synchronous, team-based learning, absolutely. Rotating engagement with group work and breakouts, that's an interesting one. Yeah, Ray, I know a lot of students are overwhelmed, as are faculty. So yeah, master list of due dates. Actually, one of the recommendations we came across is to really use the calendar. Group projects, yes, group plans. Collaboration is very, very important. As Rose said earlier, students really want engagement with faculty as well as with each other. And so it's very important to bake that into your plans, even though the group is large. Flipgrid videos, great. Formative assessment, peer assessment. Yes, we're going to talk about that as well in a little more detail. Google Docs, yep, for collaborating. Excellent. Yeah, break your students into smaller groups and touch base with them. We're going to talk a little bit later about some of the ways that the LMS can help you with that. Karen, yeah, we can absolutely have students managing some of the discussion for us. So I'm just going to scroll back to see if I missed anything important.
I like the annotation feature on using the annotation feature in Zoom.
Yes.
That was above.
And Renee, yeah, being online every day, teaching online is demanding. There's no question about it. What I have personally found is that the more you log in, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? The more you log in, the less work you have because things don't build up in your absence. So I always find that to be helpful. That's great. Super. Thank you so much. We are going to ask you another question. What opportunities has this provided for you? So are there things you can do now that you could not have done before in your face-to-face classes? Recording the lessons? Yep. Providing Google Meet link, opportunities for students to connect with each other in real time. Peruse all, that's interesting. I have never used Peruse all, Keith, but yes, I have heard of other faculty using it. Study buddies, yep, that also came up frequently in the research that Rose and I have done. Yes, online learning, Karen, absolutely requires students to take a little bit more ownership of their learning. And what that means for us as faculty is to make sure we provide the supports that they need. Your change, Keith, has been from 20 to 60. That's quite a transition. And I'm guessing you don't have any TAs. One really nice thing about moving to remote instruction is that more students can participate. So it makes it a little tougher on the instructor, but. Oh, one-on-one time with videotaped demonstrations. Yes, that is a good way to manage labs, depending, of course, on how much time you have. Yeah, live video teaching, that's excellent. Any other opportunities that you have found? Yep, Kevin, absolutely. If students are making presentations, it can be a lot easier for those who are shy or anxious. On the other side of that, however, we've heard a lot of faculty talk about how part of the public speaking skill set is to be able to speak in front of large groups, which can be intimidating. So I think there's two sides to that coin.
Flexibility. I heard a lot more people, a lot more students are showing up to office hours than they have in the past because it's easier to get there.
Oh, Maureen, I love this one. It provides the faculty with an opportunity to reflect and evaluate the effectiveness of a lecture. Yeah, less is more, definitely. Get to the point, be concise. Brevity is important. It does allow you to personalize instruction somewhat, Sylvia. Again, depending on how large the group is, that can be difficult. So a lot of the strategies we're going to share with you in a few minutes are ways of speaking to students, but not necessarily in a one-on-one mode. And we'll get to that in a minute. Yes, you can personalize by groups. We've done that as well. Let's move on to challenges. What challenges have surfaced for you?
Academic integrity.
Yes, absolutely. That has always been an issue for us, even more now. Time management, absolutely critical, and bandwidth issues, yes, particularly for students. What we've learned at Stony Brook is that they're about 15% or a little bit less than 15% of our student body do not have good bandwidth, or they don't have robust devices. So some of them may be trying to take their course from a phone. Gauging student engagement. There are ways to do that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move on. Ian, nice to see you here. Yes, students can disappear. So we have a couple of strategies for that as well. Oh, having students, yeah, who have reading problems, that can be an issue. Yeah. Students can be less engaged. We're going to talk hopefully about ideas for you to get them more engaged. I'm sorry. Who is that?
It was just an open mic temporarily.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, students might shut down. There again, we really have to keep them engaged. And not having video on in Zoom, yeah, that can be a problem. I mean, we have to have video off to make sure that our connection is stable, but it can be difficult if you have a very large group. So like today, we have 102 people. And so therefore, we had suggested that, if you do want to speak, just let us know and you can put yourself on camera. Public speaking, yes. Thank you, Ray. That is an issue. Harder to reach out to those who are struggling. It can be, but we have some ideas on that as well. Yep, turn off the video, but checking to make sure they're not MIA. No problem, Kevin, with the caps. That's fine. Okay, these are all, great contributions. Oh, interruptions at home. That's a big issue for people who have school-age children and spouses who are also working at home. Yeah, that's a tough one. And pets. Rose and I consistently have our pets kind of disturbing what's going on because they want a little attention or they're getting spoiled by having us at home. So yeah, that is a problem. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on. We're going to share some of our strategies with you now that we've uncovered. And as we present them, I just want to point out to you that everything that we're sharing with you comes from the references, which you'll find on the last two slides at the end. So you'll have these to refer to on your own if you want. So the first thing is there are ways to leverage what's going on in Professor Meatloaf. I love that. There are multiple ways to leverage your LMS. So in Blackboard, for example, and other LMSs as well, you can use date restrictions. Date restrictions are very important for helping you build pieces of the course in advance, because once the course begins, you really want to be able to focus on assisting your students, engaging with them, and interacting with them. So date restrictions enable you to even put announcements up early, content up early, and just have it displayed at the appropriate moment. Some of you mentioned setting up groups, very important. Putting students in smaller groups will help, especially if you train them to, again, take responsibility for their learning and, function almost as a team, so a team learning approach. Your notifications. So in Blackboard in particular, there's the retention center. The notifications are helpful for warning you that students are having difficulty or that particular students are not engaged. And of course, this is in reference to asynchronous teaching. So you definitely want to use that. Also, we mentioned earlier the calendar. If your LMS has a calendaring system, definitely use it so that students can see exactly what's due when. Very important. The second strategy has to do with maintaining instructor presence and student engagement. As you will recall from Rose's comment earlier, one of the things that students find very important in their online classes is they still want to be engaged with the instructor. They don't want to feel like the instructor is AWOL. So what you can do is you can use things like icebreakers, which is, a typical online strategy that we have always advocated. You can have office hours, even if you're teaching asynchronously, very important. You can have synchronous review sessions so that students can get questions answered, on a regular basis or even before major assignments are due. You definitely want to try to recognize their achievements. So I always like to say, find them doing something right. And, when students are posting beautiful responses to the discussion board, or when someone has submitted an awesome assignment, these are things that you want to call out for students. It shows that you're engaged and paying attention to what they're doing. Using short videos is a good way to demonstrate your presence. These can be really, really short. These can be a minute or 2 minutes, just, either introducing students to a module or clarifying a concept that many of them are having difficulty with. Also utilizing groups and group leaders. This is really, really important, especially when you're getting past the 50 mark. So if your enrollment is upwards of 50, it can be really hard to manage and still engage with everyone in the class. So you can break your students into groups. When you do groups, you definitely want to have group leaders, because groups have to be guided to stay on task. Camille, Camille asked a question about tools. And Rose is responding to that. Thank you, Rose.
You're welcome.
So creating your short videos demonstrates presence. One other thing that several have recommended is to create what are called study buddy notes, which is sort of like a little how-to sheet, what to focus on and how to study in your particular discipline. That's very helpful to students. For the group discussions, discussion board, again, is one of the main ways that we interact with each other. And in a large class, it can be really difficult to manage. But if you use groups, smaller groups, students will be able to function a little bit more easily in discussion. You can have them collaborating on assignments and also discussing problem-solving scenarios. When you do that, it's very important to have a student group leader who's responsible to facilitate the group, keep everyone on track. And then you can have other leaders in the group whose job is to synthesize and summarize the material and report back to the larger class. You can have groups submit a single response to a discussion question. And you can also schedule your time so that you're not necessarily, nor do you have to, reply to every student in the discussion board every day or even every week. The important thing is for you to post in the discussion board so that students know that you are reading their work and that you are present in the class. So we had a couple of comments in the chat. Let me just take a look there.
We also had a successful, over the summer, we had a successful class, but large, over, I believe it was between 100 and 150 students, and they used TAs to have group sessions, group discussions, and then the TAs would bring the summary of the information to the faculty. And if you don't have TAs, sometimes students would be able to do that. Group leaders would be able to do that as well.
Thank you, Rose. We have more also on TAs coming up in a minute. Let's go to the third strategy related to assessment. And this may be one of the toughest ones in terms of faculty workload, because it's very time consuming to do grading, especially if you want to do it in a robust way where you're providing students with concrete and individualized feedback. So there are a couple of ways to do it. You can create audio recordings, which I mean, for me, it's always much easier to do a recording, much quicker to do a recording than to type a response. You can use automatic feedback. And what we mean by that is if you have rubrics, then the rubrics sort of do the job of giving feedback to students for you. Also, in tests and quizzes, you can make sure that you have branched responses, or feedback, I should say, to each response, so that when students select a response, they can get an explanation of what was wrong or what was right about that response. Banks of comments, I have used this with large groups, where, I find myself making similar comments to a lot of students. And so I'll open TextEdit or Notepad and start copying those comments there so that I can reuse them. Then I also often will go in and make a specific comment to an individual that accompanies that sort of stock comment. You definitely can make feedback to the whole class. You can do that by video, by audio, or even just by a posted announcement that refers to everything everyone has talked about. Some of the people that we have studied have suggested that you grade only the content on a discussion and also on an assignment, but not necessarily mechanics. That's, that's kind of a personal choice I think you have to make. Obviously, if you're teaching a writing course or any kind of communications course, that would not be a good strategy, but it will speed you up if you are less focused on things like grammar and punctuation and things like that. Peer review and self-reflection are great ways of getting feedback to students, and also providing interaction from student to student. Rubrics and exemplars, we talked about a little bit already. On the point of exemplars, I think it really helps students tremendously if they can see an example of an assignment, especially one that's very concise and very well done. That will also help you. Just be sure if you're going to use an assignment from a prior student that you have his or her permission to post it. Let's see, is there anything that we have missed? Setting time limits for yourself. So, some faculty have said that they spend, 45 minutes 2 or 3 times a week to do grading. Again, a lot is going to depend on what kind of assignments you have, whether you have detailed rubrics and so on. But definitely managing your time. Oops.
Sorry, I clicked. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Managing your time is an important factor, because you don't want to be chained to your desk, right? So you have to sort of set some boundaries for you. And really, when you're giving students feedback, you really want to focus on not just improvement, but also what have they done well. So the more that you are able to encourage them to continue with good performance, the more likely it is that you'll be getting the kind of outcome that you want.
I'm going to throw one more strategy in, Linda.
Go ahead.
It's helpful for you to have tests and assignments due during open help desk hours. So that way, if students do have a technical question, they're not coming to you and they're going to the help desk. If your help desk is not open on Saturday and Sunday, it's probably not a great idea to have your test due on Saturday and Sunday if they think they might need technical, if you think they might need technical assistance or have technical problems.
Thanks, Rose. Yep, good point. So don't take on the job of tech support, right? You have a help desk to do that. So make sure that your syllabus and maybe other places in your course have quick and easy to find links to the tech support that students can access. FAQs are a great idea. You probably have lots of these from former sections of your class that you've taught. Put it all in a document and provide it to students along with the syllabus at the beginning, or even module by module. And having a general Q&A forum is also helpful. Very often, students will be able to help other students. So that also alleviates some of your workload. Being consistent in your habits, very important. Students will learn to rely on how they see you interacting in the course. Introducing yourself, this is really just about providing students with one click to reach you if they have to. So that's helpful, and it also demonstrates presence. Course has to be organized, and those of you who are SUNY know that we try to standardize on the OSCAR rubric, which provides lots of good practical tips for keeping the course organized and navigable for students. Definitely you want to share your grading policies and also share other resources that could be helpful to students. So for example, make sure students have a link to the Writing Center, make sure students have a link to the Tutoring Center, things like that will provide students with what they need and less of a drain on you. On the topic of TAs that Rose mentioned earlier, we have done a lot of work at Stony Brook, thanks to one of our postdocs, Dr. Kimberly Bell, to prepare TAs to be more than just graders and monitors. So it's very important if you have a large class and you have the benefit of TAs, which is awesome, not everyone does, to make sure that they are really going to be like a right hand to you. And to do that, you really need to train them. And then also keep them engaged with you throughout the course. So making a sort of a sense of team teaching almost will help you. And then finally, consult with an instructional designer. If you're not sure how any of these things can work in your course, or if you've tried some of them and they haven't been satisfactory to you, check in with an instructional designer in your center for teaching. They will definitely be able to look at your course a little bit more objectively and come up with some new ideas, hopefully. Yep, VoiceThread is awesome. We use it a lot at Stony Brook. Definitely humanizes the course. Okay, I think we're about ready to go to breakout rooms.
Okay, so I'm going to explain these and hopefully it all makes sense. So the one thing we're going to do is please navigate to the bit.ly link, bit.ly/large-enrollment, and all the instructions are there as well. And I'm just going to do a new share with my entire screen over here so I can show you. So you're going to be broken up into groups. You guys can see my strategies for teaching Google Doc. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you're going to be broken up into random groups, and then you're going to decide which article you want to read based on, if you want to talk about student expectations, quizzes, reducing grade load, or one of the other, topics. So as a group, you'll quickly decide. You'll peruse the article. There are links to the 3 articles. Everyone's going to this one document. Make sure you choose a spokesperson because some people will have the opportunity to report back. Otherwise, we'll have the Google Doc and we'll share that with everyone as well. After you review the article, please share possible solutions based on the article and then discuss which solution seems most promising and how you might implement it. And depending on what group you are, you would just click on one of these links and then you can go down. It'll pop, well, it's only group 1. So it pops you down and it gives you, choose the article. You could just check off the article you chose and then put your information in these boxes. That way, when we send it to everyone, it's concise and everyone could take a look at it on the group from each group. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Linda, that makes sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to everyone else. Basically, work as a team. And in the interest of modeling good practice, we would ask you to choose a spokesperson, choose a note taker, and, generally keep your group on task, so that you have something, relevant and useful to share with the rest of the group when you're done.
And
So
you
it
know
looks-
what? I have
looks-
to just, you can't, hold on. Sorry about that. You might have to refresh the page because I just changed the permissions. So I had to,
Lisa, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I was going to create the breakout rooms for you, or is this something that you would like to do yourself?
no, you could do them at just random.
Okay.
Six,
So there's going to be 14 breakout rooms.
great, thank you.
Okay.
Super.
And how long do you want us in the breakout rooms?
We're thinking about 20 minutes. The information, the web articles that we're sharing with you come from Arizona State University, where they have had a very robust online program. So there's a lot of good material there. So we want you to have plenty of time to look through your article of choice and then discuss it with your team and prepare to report back. So 20 minutes.
All right.
And I'm going to hang back here.
Okay, I just set a timer as well, and I can give people a 2-minute warning.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yep. Okay, it looks like people are getting in there. I want to make sure there's not somebody in a room by themselves. So we have Karen and Tammy. Good. Okay. There does look like.
And Lisa, you'll get information, you'll get a note if someone says there's an issue.
Yes, I do see that there's one person by themselves. I'm going to move them into 10.
And Kevin McGill asked if he could go back into breakout room 13. He popped out by mistake.
Oh, okay. Kevin McGill. And where's Kevin? I gotta find him.
Rose, can you post the link to, oh, you got it there already. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. People are clicking. I see. I see icons.
Okay.
Did you see Shoshana, Lisa? Oh.
Lisa, it looks like we still have a few people who landed in rooms by themselves because I think some folks have logged out.
I don't think Lisa's on anymore.
Oh,
Is CPD info there,
yeah, that's Michaela.
Michaela?
I don't know what happened to Lisa. I don't see Chris Price either. So I don't know if for some reason there's quite a few people that are not in any room. And the problem is I'm no longer the host. All right.
I could say it out loud too. If anyone's in a room by themselves, they can just read an article and make comments in a group starting with 20. I think there was only 14 breakout rooms, but I'm not 100%. Or you could chat with us here.
Yeah, for sure. Rose and I are still in the main area, so if you want to remain here and just,
Lisa's on our way back.
okay. Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
Lisa, are you here? Oh, wow.
If anyone's in the main room and would like to chat or has any questions, let us know.
All right, I'm going to log back out for a second and then I'll log right back in.
I see people starting to post information in the Google Doc, which is awesome. Thank you so much.
group should end any minute, correct?
I see people still contributing to the Google Doc. That's wonderful. Thank you. We do have a few more minutes, I think, Rose.
Yeah, I don't have that. Does anyone, is Lisa here?
Lisa is in a breakout room.
Oh, okay. We don't know how many minutes are left, right?
I don't know. She's in room 5.
Okay.
So it says, Rose, that you can join that room. If you look.
Oh, okay. Got it. Have to find it.
For those of you who have stayed here in the main session, by all means, access the Google Doc if you'd like. Pick an article and just add some comments to anywhere on the Google Doc. Since you're not actually in a group right now, that's fine. Do we know how much time is left, Rose?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
Here, they come back, Linda.
Yep.
Lisa, all the breakout rooms closed?
The breakout rooms are closed.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
So we're going to start. We'd like to hear some feedback, and we have the Google Doc, which we'll clean up. We'll get rid of all the empty space, and then we'll share that with everybody as well. Would any of the spokespeople like to tell us what your group discussed?
I was in
Possible
group
solutions?
group
Okay.
one, so I could just go real quickly. We read, talked about the article on best practice, the first one, for managing student expectations, quizzes, reducing grading load, and we talked about using reminders, frequent reminders, maybe even using the Remind app, and just trying to make sure that students knew when things are due. Both Keith Landon and I both use specifications grading in our course, and while it takes some getting used to, it definitely, for both of us, I think lessens the amount of time we actually have to spend grading, because we don't have to sort of figure out what's the difference between a C and a B and give everybody feedback. We only really give the feedback to the people that the detailed feedback to those who don't meet the specifications. Keith also creates lots of multiple custom multiple choice quizzes and gives students the chance to retake them. And then we just talked about figuring out lots of ways to communicate with students, just so we're all on the same page, having Zoom meetings with students, and making sure you use rubrics. That's what Donna was talking about, and then she got cut off. So yeah, it was good.
So, Chris, could you just elaborate a little bit on the difference between rubrics and specifications?
Well, I mean, our specifications would just be one rubric. It would be the criteria is just in one cell, right? There's no delineation between A, B, C, right? You just have, here are the specifications, here's what you have to do to complete this assignment successfully, and you have to meet all the specifications, unlike a traditional sort of grade-based rubric where an A is this, a B is this, a C is this. And then for those who don't know about specifications grading, you figure out their letter grade at the end of the course, rather than on each assignment. So typically students who get the A did more assignments or did higher level assignments than the students who got a C. The C students will just maybe complete some, lower stakes assignments, or in the case of my class, they complete 2 rather than all 4 papers, and they do just the annotated bibliography for the research project. They don't do the whole paper. So.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that.
Anyone from group 2? There's comments in the Google Doc.
I guess I can talk from group 2. We talked about group work, article 2, although not really specifically about the article, just about group work in general. And depending on the assignment, how the groups are generated. In my group, Sylvia, she teaches Spanish classes, and she's found that having them grouped by major helps with vocab development, because they're just talking about their specific majors vocabulary for Spanish. We talked a lot about Zoom breakout rooms and polling for quizzes, and breakout rooms for groups, and annotation. And then ideal group size being 4 to 6 folks. So that was what we talked about. And most of the things that that were in the article are things that, we're doing already.
Thank you, Andrea.
Group 3 or any other groups?
Hi, I was in group 3, and we actually saw an omission, even though we looked through all 3 articles. And under the area of managing student expectations, I think many students expect to be able to use their mobile devices to continue to participate, especially if they're at work, if they're traveling. And it wasn't mentioned about designing for mobile, which I think is an important consideration. And Ray mentioned, of course, there's not a whole lot that instructors might be able to do, but there are a few things like understanding the limitations of the LMS as far as mobile, and that we would like to recommend faculty be able to test their course or view it on a mobile device like their phone or an iPad. And Elizabeth in our group was actually on her phone, and she realized there are limitations when we're doing this, but the expectation is still there to be able to use a mobile device. And especially if you're looking at, whether small classes or large, up to 400 students, it just magnifies the need of our students to be able to continue schooling.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
And yeah, that is a big gap. I mean, some students only have the capacity of a phone. So that could be a big problem.
Exactly. Somebody in our group mentioned that as well, that some of our students do not have a computer. All they have access to is a phone. So.
Right.
Miriam said she could speak on Article 3.
Marianne.
Hello,
Yep.
hello,
Hello.
yes,
Hi.
yes. I had to switch back because I was on the website, so I wanted to get back to unmute myself. Okay, this article was really discussing about the communication of the instructor-student presence, and one of the key points that I really liked was about having a FAQ, having a sheet of when you had other classes, the students had questions and you were constantly answering those questions. So developing a document that incorporates those questions, it would save you time of answering the same question over and over. And also within that FAQ, you can touch on points in the syllabus, add that in there. In addition to that, I think because I asked someone in the chat before that they create videos showing people how to navigate. And I think that's important too, because as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you can actually explain, you can go to this folder to find this, but actually showing them by doing a quick video tutorial, showing them how to go to a folder, how to click on this, how to do that. I think that would be better and it might be more work on the front end, but it'll be less work going forward that you would have to do because it's less time you're spending answering those questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, a guided tour. I like to call it a guided tour of the course.
Yes.
Helpful.
There's more groups that have responded. Does anyone want to?
I can go for group 5.
Thank you.
So Evelyn and I discussed kind of group work and how to get students to connect with each other. And Evelyn really liked the roles, having leaders and facilitators. And I really liked the peer review of the student work. My reason for liking the peer review of student work is that I teach in grad, and our program, education program, is mostly online, even though we did have some hybrid, which we've had to convert because of recent difficulties. But there's a lot of student reflections, and I've noticed that there are issues in terms of grammar, punctuation, spelling, and I think I wouldn't want to eliminate all of the written assignments, but I feel like it would be good for students to have an audience for their writing. That's not necessarily me. And so for them to read each other's reflections and respond to each other and put their best foot forward for each other, and then get into discussion groups where they're talking about their reflections to the content. And then I would grade their participation in that rather than for every single module reading all of the student assignments.
Thank you. Maybe one more person to share, then we'll wrap up. Just like a real class, right? Group 6, perhaps.
Well, I'll speak up. I'll grab the reins. So in group 13, we tackled Article 3, and we talked about, a few of us said that we were already doing some of the things like we offer after our classes, because some of my students, I have them You know, I give them the ability to reach me on the weekends, or they can reach me up to a certain point at night, because I know some of them struggle with, you know, life on life terms type of stuff. I have a Q&A during the class to keep them engaged, to make sure that they're absorbing and for clarity of what the lesson was in the class. I also discussed that, you know, I have a rubric, you know, because I teach speech communication. So I have a rubric that I pass out to each of the students so that we all can constructively, you know, give some feedback on everybody's speech. You know, I also, you know, give them a presentation roster to dispel some of the anxiety of when am I speaking. And I also shared with the group for engagement, I tell them the elevator story, you know, the elevator pitch about 30 seconds. So I have my students do 30 seconds, you know, in my first class, introducing themselves, what they expect of the class, what they expect, you know, from each other, and where they expect to be in you know, 3 years from now. And it kind of works. So, you know, that was my story.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mhm.
How big is your class?
28 students.
Okay. And is it synchronous or asynchronous?
It's synchronous.
Synchronous.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I found very useful. I don't remember in which group I was, but I have a question that is general. I found very useful peer review. So when students review other students' work, and I was wondering if you have any strategies to assess students who review other students, because sometimes there are those love comments. Students wants to help each other, so their review is always very positive, not real. So do you have any strategy on this type of assessment? A suggestion?
Yeah, actually, several of our faculty have used a checklist form of a rubric, where similar to what Chris described as specifications. So a very concise rubric in the form of a checklist that indicates to students what it is they're supposed to be doing when they review another student's. So, and that checklist, of course, can include, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then just general feedback. So whatever you're expecting, I think this comes under the category also of expectations. What do you expect students to do for their peers when they're assessing? And if you have a document like that, it will really, truly help a great deal.
And do the students grade the other students, or is just that review has an impact on the grade, or is just
So the feedback that students are giving to other students, they are not necessarily grading the other student's paper, but their goal is to help the students whose material they're reviewing to improve, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, it's very important that they do a good job of providing feedback. So I have seen faculty grade the peer reviewers on how concrete their feedback is, but they don't necessarily grade another student's paper. And again, you know, some of that has to be tailored to your subject matter and also to the level of your students. So you could expect more from graduate students than you might be able to expect from undergrad students, especially if they're in lower division. It depends. It needs a little bit of tailoring. Rose, do you have any other comments about peer review and peer assessment?
No, you know, rubrics are definitely, you know, the way to go. I would say what Linda said is right on the mark.
And maybe someone else in our group has another thought.
Denise raised her hand, and we only have 1 minute left. I want to
Yeah, just say that that's exactly what I do. I do have a rubrics that they follow very strictly how they will, evaluate. And one of the speech before they do is that they need to be nice, but they have to be constructive because it's not, wasting of time of anybody. And then they know that I will actually go and check what they checked. And it siphons to me to the area that if they say everything is beautiful, then I really have to look everything. But if they tell me there is a problems like in some areas, then I know I need to check that too. So it works easier. And they know that I will definitely give them feedback about their feedback. So
Excellent.
it goes in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.